What's kickoff time tonight? Let's check it out. You must be paying me too much if you get.
Including my mother, my sister, my aunt, my son and his girlfriend.
You're just a good dad. But you don't have to stay with her, do you?
No, we can't.
Well, Boston's not a bad place for a weekend.
No.
Is it going to be as nice as here?
Hello, Mr. Ray.
Is it going to be as nice as here? It's going to be
I'm well,
62
how are you?
degrees here.
It's just moved out really, so
Yeah.
I'm hoping that this weather we have today.
Ready for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, my niece likes it.
I'm not worried about it. I just want to let you know it wasn't a tear. There you go. We can call the meeting to order, please. This is the special meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Riverside on Monday, November 19th, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. in Room 4 of the Riverside Township Hall, 27 Riverside Road. This special meeting is being held for the purpose of receiving an annual report presentation from Commonwealth Edison and to hear public comment on that. So without further ado, we shall move on, and I will ask our village clerk to please call the roll for this special meeting.
Trustee Sussman.
I am here.
Trustee Sell.
Here.
Trustee Reynolds.
Here.
Trustee Sakchi.
Here.
Trustee Valerie.
Here.
President Gorman.
Here.
Also present, Village Manager Peter Scalera. Not with us this evening is Trustee Mark Shevitz.
Thank you, and with that, we have a quorum, so we shall proceed. We shall move first for our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all please stand and join us, I will ask our village manager, Peter Scalera, to lead us in the pledge today. Thank you. And again, the purpose of this meeting is to receive an annual report from Commonwealth Edison. And with that, I will turn to Commonwealth Edison External Affairs Manager, Fabiola Mezqua. And Fabiola is our primary contact for all issues dealing with Commonwealth Edison. And we have had many opportunities to work with her. So Fabiola, please.
Thank you. Good evening. I wanted to thank President Gorman and the Village of Riverside for giving me the opportunity to come speak to you this evening. My name is again Fabiola Mezqua. I am the Comment External Affairs Manager for the Village of Riverside. Well, basically, what we're going to be going through tonight's presentation is really primarily to focus on providing the village board with the 2011 annual report. We'll be discussing the average number of interruptions by cost, as well as review the safety and cadence, and this is for the municipality. The safety stands for the system average interruption frequency index, or the average number of interruptions by a customer. And I'll go over this again for the next particular slide of the definitions. Again, KD stands for the customer average interruption duration index, or the average length of a customer interruption in minutes. We'll plan to touch on what system improvements have been done in 2011 and what has been planned for 2012. And finally, we'll just review different tools and communication channels that customers have The next slide. The next slide is basically the safety indices for both storm and non-storm for primarily for the last 5 years. Again, safety is the frequency. If you want to look at it, safety is a frequency, and again, is based on the average number of interruptions by a customer in Riverside. The diamond is where ComEd system number is, and now a new feature that we added is the green, which is a regional safety. Riverside is part of what we consider the Chicago region, which is not only the city of Chicago, but also 28 municipalities, what we call the Maywood region. So that is what that number signifies. So again, to the left is basically, where we are with storms. One thing to point out, the lighter blue, if I may, right here, is basically storm, but that is system-wide storms, which last year was one of our worst in history in regards to storms. One of them was July 11th, and the other one was June 21st. What that means is that basically during the whole system of our territory, those were the ones that were impacted. But there were 14 reportable storms last year, which was the most that we had on record. So it kind of gives you an understanding of that number. So you're basically, what we're saying here is a 2.75, meaning that one customer would have experienced in 2011 2.75 interruptions that year. Without storm, you have basically 1.25, meaning that a resident would experience on average 1.25 interruptions in 2011. If you look at, of course, the indices here for the ComEd and the regional are a little bit lower. So there is definitely, where we're talking about, and I'll discuss it a little bit more in the next slide with the Katy, because it gives you a whole different perspective. We added that new index with the region because it gives you an understanding that not necessarily all regions see the same type of storm, so they get impacted as much. But I know like in 2011, the area that I cover, we did see quite a few. And that's why it is being reflected in terms of the number of outages. The next slide. Again, this is the Katy, if you want to look at it, is basically the duration in minutes is defined as the average length of a customer interruption in minutes in an annual basis for your municipality for the last 5 years. Again, in 2011, which was one of our worst seasons in storms, your number is below where with the ComEd system and even at the regional level. What that means is that it took us about 338 minutes to restore, on average, an interruption in the Village of Riverside. And here to my right, basically you have the number, the duration in minutes without storm. The following is basically, what are the trends, what are the causes of all these interruptions in Riverside in 2011? And what you can see here on the orange is, the purple, I'm changing the colors. Purple is basically the ones that you can see the trends, which were primarily weather related, underground, and tree related, were basically the causes of most of the outages in 2011. And you can see some of the trends. So we look at all this different data. We also break it down by, our reliability engineers look at the outages pretty much every day, look at, what the causes were. If there's chronic in a particular circuit, they go out and inspect it. We, just as a reminder, and we'll talk a little bit more, one of the things that we do is not only we do preventive and corrective, and we'll talk about some of the work that was done in 2011 and some of the work that has been planned for 2012. So this is what was completed in 2011. There was one circuit, Delta 412, under capacity improvement. Basically what that means is that we looked at the circuit and we needed to do a load balance. Basically it was, we had a lot of either load on that circuit and we needed to modify it to balance that particular load. One of the reliability improvements, it was on circuit Delta 510. That particular one we needed to basically install, we installed fusing. It's basically, if you look at it, it's like you have at home a panel in your home where you have fuses for different rooms. So if something happens in one room, it's gonna pop that fuse so your whole house is not affected. So basically, that's what we were doing with this particular circuit.
Can you tell us where these were?
Sure. I can give you, I did bring that. For Delta 412, I'm gonna give you some of the boundaries for that circuit.
Will we get a copy of your presentation?
We can get that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
For Delta 410, for Delta 412, the north boundary is still a plain, south boundary is Quincy, east boundary is Harlem, and the west boundary is East Avenue. For Delta 510, the north boundary is Quincy, south boundary is 47th Street, east boundary Home Avenue, and the west boundary is Juliet. And I'm just giving you boundaries because it's not necessarily, it covers all that area because a lot of circuits intertwine. And then part of it is sometimes on purpose to do that. The system performance improvements on Delta 690 and on line 5133. On Delta 690, what we did is basically add some switches and arresters. And on that line 5133, we ended up replacing a pole and a cross arm that needed to be replaced. Delta 690, the boundaries are north boundary is 16th, south boundary is De La Plaine Road, east boundary is Harlem, and west boundary is 14th Avenue. And one of the things that we do is also vegetation management. We basically look at our circuits. They're in a 4-year cycle. We completed in 2011 9 circuits. The Village of Riverside has 13 circuits that serve the customers of Riverside. So that basically we're in 4 years, and I believe the remainder they're probably scheduled for the next couple of years. There is something that is required, and our clearances is basically about 10 feet all around. For 2012, the distribution automation on this one, on these two particular lines, is already a part of what we call in the smart grid. This is one of the distribution automation. What we're trying to do there is really break up the circuit, meaning that if something happens, if you want to break the circuit in half, you put this distribution automation device in the middle, if you will. If a circuit is serving 1,000 customers, if something happens, what we call it the front end of the circuit, it would basically automatically switch the back end and to another circuit at the back end. So it's only those customers in the front end that would experience the outage versus the whole circuit. So this is part already of what we're trying to do with the smart grid.
Asking you questions.
Sure.
So what do you know about what percentage of our village then has the distribution automation improvements?
I can go back, but we just started with, yes, we just started under the new bill, the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act, EIMA, which got approved by last year in at the end of 2011. So we basically started rolling with this program, and this is one of the first things that we're trying to, do this, what we call in the smart grid, by putting smart devices and do automatic switching. So this is just the beginning.
Do you know how long it'll take to do the whole village? To do the smart grid for the whole village?
That is, we have a plan, and under the EIMA is basically a 10-year program.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that funding was reduced by the Illinois Commerce Commission. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Correct.
They actually reduced Edison's profit they're allowed to make, which impacts distribution automation.
Correct.
And smart grid, so they're rethinking how much they're going to do and how fast they're going to do it.
Correct. Mm-hmm. And one of the delays is the smart meters. And that's one of them, we had the pilot, and one of them is basically, is being affected right now. For 2012, what we did is continued with the 3 additional circuits that were completed for tree trimming, and other reliability improvements that were done was overhead inspection,
We did Delta 510 on circuit inspection. All these are, again, are preventive. We have certain programs that we take a look at every circuit, depending on the cycle of the program. Some of them are 3 years, some of them are 4, some of them are 5 years. So this is some of the circuits that we did complete in 2012. For example, here's a thermography is another program where we basically take a thermal scan of the circuit that was done on that particular line. On Delta 526, and I'll give you where those boundaries are for Delta 526. The north boundary is 25th, south boundary Ogden, east boundary Austin Boulevard, and west boundary Veterans Drive. So we continue to do a lot of work. It's pretty much, we also take a lot of information that we receive from the village with customers. We do take a look at that. And one of them was on Delta 690 that we did that work, which was install reclosures. That was one of the circuits that we had some customers, and we did some investigation during the summer, and the work was completed. I'm sorry, I apologize. So information was provided to us. We did complete the review, and the work was completed in June of this year.
And where is 690?
690 is the north boundary 16th, south boundary De La Plaine, east boundary Harlem, and west boundary 14th Avenue.
Thank you.
Here's, because of last year, since it's one of our worst storm seasons, we did a lot of improvements to basically one of the biggest things was communications. Communications internally, communications outside with our customer. One of the improvements that we did is basically some technology such as, we added basically new generators to be able to support some of our emergency response restoration, as well as have GPS capability for tracking of our crews, as well as having a lot of our either contractors and be able to have the tickets available through them electronically. One of the things that we did get a lot of feedback last year was, of course, on the communications where customers were not able to let us know about did they have an outage. So we did make a lot of improvements in the beginning of this year, which basically now you can text us and let us know that you're out. There is also a mobile app application with your iPhone as well as an Android. People were using a lot of the social media as well as Facebook and Twittering. A lot of information that was very useful, meaning not only that they were out, but they were letting us know if there were trees down in the backyard, if there were wires down in the backyard, transformers, because that information helps us understand the amount of damage and where it is located. So that is also helpful for us to understand that information. Next.
I guess,
Sure.
just so the board is aware of the last one, the JOC.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for pointing it out. Basically, one of the improvements that we did is we partner with a lot of municipalities, and what we did is basically do a joint operating center. What that means is that for a particular region, you're basically considered the Maywood region. And let's say that we have basically, we serve about, I can't remember exactly the figure, but I know it's over 100,000 customers in a particular region. If for a particular storm, if we reach basically the 20% of customers that are out, it's going to activate this JOC, this Joint Operating Center. What that means is that we already established 3 different locations within the Maywood region where we would invite a representative from one of the municipalities to basically help us prioritize the work, meaning specifically for the critical facilities. As you know, it's not only your home, but sometimes we do get affected, the village halls and the fire departments. And for us, hospitals, those are critical facilities that we need to address. So we basically partner with the municipalities to join in one particular location and work through getting those critical infrastructure up and running during storms. And again, this only occurs when we reach at this 20% milestone. And during this summer, we actually did open 2 JOCs, and we had a lot of lessons learned as well, but also a lot of compliments of how things work between ComEd and the municipalities to getting restoration. And finally, here are the different tools that we were discussing as far as how to reach ComEd. And I did leave some information, basically like a little flyer that you can take with of how to reach out to ComEd. Peter, I also, in there, I already put the website for the, let's see if you can escape, where it's the ComEd website. So I wanted to show you how that outage map, this is something that is new. I think if you click and then just open up. This is a ComEd.com website, and you /map. This is something new that we added to provide residents with the information about current outages. So you can see here where you can open up, if you will, the map. So what we can do, Peter, is you can basically type Riverside, and it will give you a zoom of the Village of Riverside and any outages that may be happening. This particular, one of the things that we did learn too is that we needed to synchronize a lot of our information that was going out to our customers because it was conflicting in terms of estimated time of restorations. Now all of those have been in sync. We're refreshing all the data every half an hour for our customers. And typically when I'm up and about and I do hear or just want to check, especially when I see there's weather pending, even on my iPad I can go and open this up and it works really good. So this one, again, it gives you information in terms of by color code in terms of what outages are occurring at this time. And this is actually what's going on at this point. Did you type Riverside and then just click there?
60546. Try the zip code.
Or we can just use a zoom as well on top. There we go. So it gives you the area, and if there would be an outage, you would see a little diamond and color code to kind of give you an understanding of the number of customers. And also, maybe we can take a look at something that is already in terms of an outage. It will give you, if we know the cost, we'll include it in there, and we'll also include if we know an estimated time of arrival or an estimated time of restoration. So these are some of the things that we did to improve our communications with our customers. So if anybody has any questions, again, if there's something specific that you want to discuss about an issue you may have or something that you've been experiencing, I'll be more than happy to stay around and take some information and get back to you. But I wanted to specifically give you some of where we are in 2011. I did look at the information for 2012, and the safety and CADI numbers are much better. And I think hopefully it's part of the improvements that we're seeing and some of the work that we're doing. So it's something that's always been looked at. And I'll open it if there's anybody has any questions.
So is there any of our trustees have any questions for Fabiola?
I do, please.
Yeah.
Hi. I think that all this work that you're doing to improve service and response is great. For me, when I'm affected or when I get a phone call from a neighbor, they want to know, a part of what people want to know are things getting better from one year to the next? Because all of this really doesn't mean anything unless service improves. And it was hard to, at least for me, maybe not for my colleagues, but it was difficult for me to tell from those first 3 charts what it means, because it looked like 1 year on the first chart, a couple of years it was getting better, then it got worse. On the second chart, the purple lines for 2011 were huge. So if somebody says to me, well, what did it mean? What does this meeting mean? Is service getting better? I would have to say, I don't know.
Well, if I may, I'm going to interpret it in my own, because I looked at all the information. What I did point out is that in 2011 was the worst storm season recorded in the ComEd history. If you look, yes, there were more interruptions. But then if you look again at that chart, it does indicate there was primarily during storm. But if you go back and look at the Katie, which is a duration in minutes, we did a really good job in basically restoring those interruptions in the Village of Riverside compared to ComEd and at the regional level. So I think it was slide, if we can go,
Slide 2.
yeah, I think it might have been slide
1
4 or
2.
5.
Oh,
Yeah. So Katie is a duration.
right.
So we're saying here, this is with all storms, you were below the ComEd system-wide in basically restoring that interruption on average. We restored in 338 minutes, and again, this is during storm. If you look at the year before, it was quite high. But here is also without non-storm, you're pretty much at the system and at the ComEd, which is something that we're looking for to make sure that we're in sync with the system and at the regional level. So we're right there. We did, they always look at, in terms of number of interruptions, the previous one, the frequency, that is high. But I contribute that to basically the number of outages that we had, and that mostly were during storm.
Can we see that prior one? The one,
Yeah,
the slide
The
right
previous
before?
one is, yeah, number 3. Frequency.
So if I can just follow up quick
Sure.
with Rick. So if we only look at the non-storm though, what Trustee Sussman is saying is still the effect, it bounces up and down. And from 2010 to 2011, there was a substantial increase.
Yes, and I think I pointed out that you want to look at the cost, I think is the next 2 slides, can't remember, this one. Basically, your true drivers, if you're not looking at the weather, is underground and tree-related outages are the main drivers
And
for
what
your
is underground
interruptions.
equipment? What does underground equipment mean?
Underground equipment is basically, just the way you have overhead primaries that deliver the service to your home. You have the same structure, if you will, underground. So this is something that we're looking at, and one of the things that part of the EIMA under the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act that we're trying to do. One of the biggest things that we're trying to accomplish is to rebuild our underground, because we understand that it's old. And one of the things that we did in 2012, I was just out there last week, we completed one of the largest projects, which is the Richland project, which is underground cable replacement, and that benefited Riverside and a couple of circuits that come from that particular substation. So that was completed. That was actually a 69 kV line that we needed to replace. It was vintage 1950s. So that's one of the things that we're trying, to secure the reliability. So hopefully this numbers, it's like anything, is we need to understand if it's one circuit, what are the trends, but those are the things that we look at and see what, if it's one particular circuit or circuits. And that is something that is looked at every year. And then we try to put some plan together to have that as part of our, if you will, the next year's plan, and what that we need to budget for.
Ma'am?
Yes.
It seems in Riverside, I live on South Delaware, and I could probably, I've been there for 25 years, and I can count on my left hand how many times I've lost power. Now, as I say that, the whole South Delaware just went dark. But there are certain streets in this town that tend to have more issues than others, and like Northwood. I had a friend that lived on Northwood off of Del Point, always seemed to go out. Up along 26th Street, certain sections tend to go out more than others. What do you do to address those targeted areas and have those particular areas? I don't know if they fall within, Delta 516
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah, I would need to, and that's something that I always work with Peter. He does give me those areas where customers call in They say they already called ComEd. They want to have a better understanding because, they've seen quite a few interruptions for that particular year, whatever the case may be. I get that information. We look at what has been done, look at the trends. We do review it. So if there is something in particular I'm not familiar, again, until I get sort of an address, because it could be one circuit in one side of the street, and across the street it could be something totally different. But I'll be more than happy to review if you have, that information, or you can give it to Peter, and then we can definitely look at that. Again, it could be not necessarily we look at the overall in terms of this particular indexes, because that's how the industry is measured on safety and Katie, and that's why you have the information. But there's always those pocket areas, and those come up, and that's why I pointed out we did some work in one of the circuits where some customers came up to Peter and worked with him, and we provided and looked at and studied that information with our engineers who went to the field. We came up with solutions. Those solutions were completed in the summer of this year. So I'll be more than happy to look at that information.
Of all these causes for the interruptions, I would assume tree-related is something that's a little bit at least under our control. And maybe animal-related, I'm not certain if that is. But could you talk a little bit about how we do with the things that we do have some control over as a community?
One of the first things, I actually brought some brochures, is avoiding tree and utility conflicts. A lot of folks, we try to have a happy medium. We're required, first of all, to do clearance of our lines, and again, it's to protect them. But again, we only clear 10-foot clearances when you're talking about, particular trees that have a large overhang, and you do your clearance, but if it's a particular species, tend to be more prone to breakage if there's wind, etc. So what you can do, there's different things, in terms of consideration. If it's something that we're always willing to work with the customer, either to remove it, and then we always give you a guidance of what trees are, if you will, good trees to plant underneath the utilities. But other than that, what we ask is our customers to, also is their responsibility to prune their trees. Is we only can do the clearance part of it, but we, like anything else, just like when you have a flower and plants in your home, you try to prune them. So the same thing happens with the trees that you have at home.
Can I ask you about the removal of lines that are no longer used, and on what schedule that's completed?
The lines that are removed?
Yeah, overhead lines I'm talking about.
That depends. I mean, there's something that's what we're talking about, thermography. That is on a cycle basis that we go and inspect and put, if you will, to look at heat spots, and they go and take a look at what is needed, because it's something that we probably more than likely would have to replace. If there's a cycle, no, we do have cycle to look at the overhead and lines as well as our equipment. There's a cycle for all of that they inspected. And again, during storms, when there is a lot of damage, I think it's one of the gentlemen that was here, one of the residents pointed out, sometimes we do go out and repair, if you will, right away to restore. We always go back and inspect the lines, because it's something that if we just did a quick repair, we have to then go back and do a full repair, if you will, or have it constant.
Yeah,
so
I guess what I'm asking
reviewing.
is lines that are no longer used, are they just left in place, or is there a schedule for removing them?
I don't think that we have anything that would be, as far as I know. If you know something that you feel that is no longer used.
Well, I'll tell you a personal experience. Behind my home, they came 2 years in a row to trim a tree that I have back there, and in my view, greatly over-trimmed it, but we allowed it because we understand about the frequency of limbs overgrowing and about safety and so forth. However, the second year that they came, they investigated and told me that they had trimmed the previous couple of years without need because the overhead lines were no longer used and they weren't concerned about them. And I was curious why those weren't removed if they're no longer used.
That was I would have to go back and take a look, and if it's something that we can remove, sometimes we keep them because they can be, you can have the next home where that ends, but in the future there'd be capacity where we're talking about load shifting that we would want to use that particular line again. I do not know until we kind of take a look, but I'd be more than happy to go in and see if it's something that is not, they feel that it's not going to be used. We can definitely, have something.
Sure. Kind of an ancillary question to that is that I know that there are some poles that are in our Swan Pond area that are no longer used. They're up on the west side of the hill, and they've been there for many, 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 many years. And I'm just curious if there's a program for removal of equipment that's no longer used at all.
And that's a good question, and honestly, I do not know if we do have something like that when we abandon, if we no longer is used, but I will definitely go back and to our construction department and ask what we do with those type of situations, and I'll be more than happy to come back to Peter and provide that information.
I'm just curious whether it's the utility's responsibility or whether once it's abandoned, it becomes the village's responsibility.
No, I would say it would be.
Yours. Okay. We can certainly point those out. Peter can
Yes.
point to those.
I have one last question. I read, and this is 15 years ago, a memo that was dated. Yeah, it's going to go back a while. And I've never been able to find this again.
Okay.
But that all overhead electrical lines that go over main thoroughfares were supposed to be taken down and buried because they go over main roads. And they were all done, and there's one left actually on South Delaware, which is the only time I lost power is because a tree came down and knocked the wire down in the middle of the street. And I keep trying to find that memo, but I can't find it. But if you would research that, if you have a chance, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
So are there any questions from our members of the audience, please?
So thank you for coming and providing this information.
Just so that we can you walk there?
Suppose. Unlike Joe, I'm not one of the lucky ones. We lose power all the time. Everybody says they lose power all the time, but Peter can document. I've been talking with him for a year and a half, trying to understand why 22 customers on D690 keep losing power for extended periods of time. I've been talking to my neighbors. My neighbor actually circulated a petition to get signatures. We are so fed up with losing our power. There's not even a storm and we lose power. So we would like this to be fixed. Talking with Peter, that ComEd acknowledges there's a power problem with the feeder and yet hasn't fixed it or won't fix it.
If you looked at the information,
I lost power 3 times after June.
After June.
One was because lightning struck it, so that one I'll give you, but the other 2, for days.
I would definitely go back and look at your information and what has been happened for this year, because I know we completed what I just mentioned about the pocket area that is the circuit, that we did included some arresters, and we did some work during the summer.
Okay.
So I'll be more than happy to look at what has happened since then, or even at the beginning of the year.
It's the same 22 customers, time after time after time, and it's happened since this work in June. So we appreciate the work, but we'd like to be like Joe and not lose our power again. Thank you.
No, thank you. So, I'm assuming this is my copy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I also sent one to our representative.
Okay.
I actually have one other question. What is the utility's responsibility in the case of... What is the responsibility of the utility in the case of this resident where she lost power for several days and let's say the food in her refrigerator spoils or she has some other problem that's caused by the outage that's not the result of a storm? Does the utility have a responsibility there?
You can definitely, there is a claim that you can put through ComEd. The form is on the ComEd website. The customer has every right to complete that form and submit that form. So that is, a venue where the customers can, see what they can recover.
Is there actually a policy on recovering lost food?
There is.
Yeah.
It's got to be X number of hours or your claim will be honored.
That information is, I can definitely provide that link again, Peter, and I know that I would try to provide certain links, especially during storms, or it's something that can, remain on your website, because it does have a lot of information.
On the policy, per se.
And the form is included in there.
Okay, thanks.
Fabiola, what is the time limit? How long do you have to be out of power in order to submit a claim? Because I know if you're out of power for 15 minutes, you can't submit a claim. It's got to be, it's pretty lengthy. What's the threshold?
Honestly, I do not know, but I can put it all in, try to summarize it for you tomorrow.
Because I know they put the information in our bills all the time. I just don't remember what it is.
Honestly, I don't want to quote something that I haven't looked for a while, so.
It's a pretty high threshold, though, I can tell you that.
Okay.
If you lose power for like 3 or 4 hours, you're not going to be able to submit a claim.
Anybody else have any questions on power usage or power outages? If not, Fabiola, I want to thank you for coming. Is there someone else at the end there? No? I want to thank you for coming. On behalf of the residents of Village of Riverside, I think we all understand power outages that result from some of the weather issues that have been happening all too frequently lately with storms and wind and fire and so forth. And I think people can be tolerant to that. What they shouldn't have to be tolerant about are chronic outages. And you've had one call to your attention, and I know the village manager has dealt with you on a few other areas of chronic outages. Those are not acceptable, and those must be addressed. The other thing I think you're doing a better job on is communication. There's always this sense of being in the dark, so to speak. And when that happens, those residents call the village first, and they call one of us up here second. So we would encourage you to continue to work with Village Manager Scalera to address those chronic problems and to continue to provide the information to the residents so they understand the status.
Sure, not a problem. I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Fabiola.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay, nothing further from the audience. At this point, I would ask for a motion and a second to adjourn this special meeting.
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion by Trustee Sussman, a second by Trustee Ballerine. If you could please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Sells.
Aye.
Trustee Reynolds.
Aye.
Trustee Sashi.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned, and we shall reconvene at 7:30 for 2 public hearings and our regular board meeting. So thank you.